What's going on, everybody? It's Gum Unboxing Reviews here, and welcome back to another episode of Community Characters, a show in which every month I pick 10 of the best custom characters created with the character creator by the community based on a specific set theme. And the next chosen theme was, of course, Marvel Noir. So you could either create a new and original Marvel Noir themed character, or a Marvel Noir version of a pre-existing Marvel character. Anyway, guys, without further ado, let's get to it. Alright, so kicking our list off at number 10, we have Doctor Strange Noir, created by The Real Scourge 2 on Twitter. Now, this character's passive abilities include the ability to interact with technology panels, control minds, use magic, manipulate time, trace runes, create portals, and teleport to different locations. And when it comes to traversal, they can use their teleport ability, hyper jump extremely high into the air, and also fly at super fast speeds. And in combat, they rely heavily on their revolver, which they can use to throw at multiple enemies and even shoot bolts and beams that will deal out heat damage. Overall, I really like this take on the character. He's got that old-fashioned magician look to him, and the use of a revolver as the source of his magic is definitely an interesting choice. Next up at number 9, we have Bliss, created by Space Gaming 5 on YouTube. Now, Space Gaming 5 has written a backstory for their character, which I will now explain. So, Miranda Simmons was once a very popular singer until one day, as she was walking home, Wilson Fisk and some of his goons kidnapped her from the street. Fisk was originally going to wait for a money reward before turning Miranda into the police, but later decided to use her in an experiment that involved nuclear technology. Now, during the experiment, Miranda's body started to go up in flames, and as she thought she was about to die, Fisk turned off the machine and was surprised to find that she was still very much alive. However, the radiation had completely changed her appearance. Miranda's body was now made of flames, and she'd even gained incredible new abilities, including the power to control people's minds and unleash a whip made entirely out of flames. With these newfound abilities, Miranda became known as Bliss, and now helps Wilson Fisk in his conquest of taking over New York City and the rest of Chronopolis. Now, this character's passive abilities include the ability to use mind control, destroy cracked Lego walls, and use super strength. And when it comes to traversal, Bliss can swing at super fast speeds with the use of her chain. And in combat, she can attack enemies with her fists, emit an explosive ability that deals out heat damage, defend herself with her force field, and also shoot beams from her hands that deal out heat damage. Overall, I think the character design and powers are really cool, but the backstory is particularly interesting because while we do find out how Miranda became Bliss, I like how there is still a lot of mystery behind this character. Why did she stay with Fisk after his scientists forcefully experimented on her? Was she grateful to him for giving her these incredible new abilities, or did she see no other way of moving forward, not being able to return to her old life with the worry that people might not accept her anymore? I guess we'll never know. Next up at number 8, we have the Carnage creator, created by Give2Reaper on Twitter. Now, Give2Reaper has written a backstory for their character, which I will now explain. So, somewhere in the 1930s, there lived a man named Cletus Cassidy. Now, Cletus had a severe split personality disorder, which unleashed a second personality known as the Carnage Creator. Now, his best friend Eddie Brock helped him with this disorder, and ever since then, Cletus has used the Carnage Creator personality to become the best hitman in the business. However, one night, Wilson Fisk tasked Cassidy with killing the mayor of New York City. It should have went down like any ordinary job, but to Cletus' surprise, the Spider-Man arrived and attempted to shoot at him. Shockingly, despite being shot, the hitman had survived, but Cletus Cassidy was no more. There was only the Carnage Creator. Carnage then created an intimidating red mask that resembled Spider-Man's and gloves that would allow him to stick to any surface. He wanted to frame Spider-Man so that when life was hard for the bug, he could step in and finally crush him. So, this character's passive abilities include the ability to grapple to reach high places, cut through Lego vines, dig for hidden items, and also track down hidden items. And when it comes to traversal, he can climb almost any surface. And in combat, he can attack with his cleaver, which he can also throw to take out multiple enemies. Overall, I think this is a great character. With two personalities, he's kind of like a combination between Cletus Cassidy and Mr. Negative, and I've always been a huge fan of both of those characters, Carnage especially. So to take that iconic character and change him in such a unique way is both a very brave and risky thing to do, but personally, I think it absolutely paid off. And it was actually really interesting to read about a version of Cletus Cassidy that became a nuisance for Spider-Man even without the Carnage symbiote. Next up at number 7, we have the Prowler Noir, created by Gilbert Glan on Twitter. Now, Gilbert Glan has written a backstory for their character, which I will now explain. So, Hobie Brown was a brilliant young man, but when he finished high school, he sadly wasn't welcomed into any universities. With little other options available, he had to resort to becoming a window cleaner. However, one day, as he was working, he was caught in the middle of a battle between the Devil of Hell's Kitchen and Stiltman. Hobie was saved by Daredevil and felt inspired by the Masked Man's heroic actions. Now, sometime after that, there was a break-in at the shop that Hobie worked at. Now, despite being completely innocent, the employer blamed Hobie for the theft and fired him. Hobie was furious. He later went on to make himself a suit complete with grapple launchers, experimental night vision goggles, claws, and boots for climbing. As he fought injustice at night, the people of New York soon came to know Hobie as the Prowler. So this character's passive abilities include the ability to grapple to reach high places, cut through Lego vines, dig for hidden items, and also track down hidden items. And when it comes to traversal, he can climb onto almost any surface and swing at very fast speeds with the use of his rope. And in combat, he can attack with his claws, target lunge attack multiple enemies, and also turn invisible. Overall, I think this character has a great costume. The bright colours on the suit are a really nice reference to Hobie's original Prowler costume from the comics, and the rest of the design fits really well with the noir theme. And as for the backstory, I felt really sorry for Hobie. You know, he just could not catch a break, but it was great to finally see him find a new purpose for himself in the end as New York's Prowler. Up next at number 6, we have Scientist Black, created by Minifigure Geek on Twitter. Now, Minifigure Geek has written a backstory for their character, which I will now explain. So, during his childhood, Jonas Black's parents were suddenly killed by an unknown masked man. Now, thankfully, Jonas survived the attack, but the masked man did unfortunately take his right arm, and oddly enough, Jonas also somehow lost all colour in his eyes, resulting in them becoming permanently white. Now, later in life, Jonas grew up to become a scientist, inventor, and an engineer. He used these skills to create a robot arm to replace what was once his right arm, and then went on to make a suit so that no one would recognize him, and also a gauntlet that he could use to shoot bullets and beams at his enemies. Eventually, Jonas did take down the masked man, but despite successfully avenging his beloved mother and father, he wanted more, and would not rest until all the people of Manhattan were finally safe. So, this character's passive abilities include the ability to grapple to reach high places, interact with technology panels, destroy cracked Lego walls, deflect incoming attacks, fix broken Lego objects, use super strength, and also track down hidden items. And when it comes to traversal, he can hyper jump extremely high into the air. And in combat, he can attack with his fists, target lunge attack multiple enemies, shoot arrows from his left hand that deal out heat damage, and shoot a beam from his left hand that deals out heat damage. Overall, I think Jonas's costume is especially cool, and the backstory is great too. I like it when vigilantes like Spider-Man and Daredevil are so determined to keep their city safe that they won't stop until there is literally no breath left in their body, and Scientist Black is definitely one of those heroes. At number 5 on our list, we have Stalker, created by RealN78 on Twitter. Now, RealN78 has written a backstory for their character, which I will now explain. So, during some time in the 1930s, NYPD officer Ryan Holman had successfully stopped a large shipment of illegal goods from entering the city. However, during one night out, a van pulled up out of nowhere and kidnapped the officer and his family. Ryan later awoke hours later with his family beside him in a mysterious factory, and he soon realized that he was sitting on a catwalk that was very high above the ground. Suddenly, out of the darkness, Wilson Fisk emerged. He explained to Ryan that he must pay for intercepting his shipments. Ryan pleaded to let his family go, but Fisk just wouldn't listen. He then had Ryan thrown from the catwalk and into a vat of acid. Hours later, Ryan shockingly arose from the acid and immediately ran to his family, hoping to hold them in his arms just one more time. Now, little did he realize that one of Fisk's goons was still in the factory. The goons started to open fire on the devastated police officer and quickly regret his decision. Each bullet that hit Ryan just continued to bounce off him, leaving not even a scratch on his body. The acid had completely changed him. Weeks had passed and it was presumed that police officer Ryan Holman was well and truly dead. However, he was in fact in hiding, trying to learn how to control his newfound abilities and discover his new purpose in life: avenge his beloved family and kill anyone who was involved. So this character's passive abilities include invulnerability, the ability to grapple to reach high places, destroy cracked Lego walls, fix broken Lego objects, use super strength, track down hidden items, and also double jump. And when it comes to traversal, he can climb onto almost any surface and hyper jump extremely high into the air. And in combat, he can attack with his revolver, which he can also throw at multiple enemies and even use to shoot bolts that deal out heat damage. Overall, I think Stalker's costume is really cool, and while his backstory is extremely tragic, it still perfectly fits the dark and gritty style that is the noir theme. Up next at number 4, we have Sneak, created by Marvel Unifan on Twitter. Now, Marvel Unifan has written a backstory for their character, which I will now explain. So, during some time in the 1930s, Jigsaw and Bullseye created a plan to use hostages as bait to lure the Punisher down to the docks. Ambitious detective Daniel Wright was tasked by his captain with sneaking into the docks, while 2 other squads surrounded the building. However, this unfortunately did not go according to plan. Without any hesitation, Bullseye and Jigsaw opened fire on the hostages. Danny was furious. He quickly burst through the door and courageously opened fire on the killers. Now, while he did manage to shoot both of them, Bullseye soon shot a bullet which then ricocheted off the wall and hit Danny. Both villains escaped and Daniel Wright was pronounced dead at the scene. However, a few hours later, Danny awoke in a dark and cold, damp room in the presence of Lady Death herself. She explained to him that it was not how Danny was intended to die and that he must go back to Earth and get vengeance on his killers. Confused, Danny stayed quiet but still accepted Lady Death's offer, resulting in her sending him back to New York. Danny returned to Earth with the Blade of 1,000 Spirits, a weapon which is believed to be able to freeze its victims and trap their spirits within the blade. Under the new name Sneak, he now hunts Bullseye and Jigsaw, seeking vengeance for what they did to him. So this character's passive abilities include invulnerability, the ability to grapple to reach high places, use mind control, fix broken Lego objects, cut down Lego vines, teleport, and also double jump. And when it comes to traversal, he can climb onto almost any surface. And in combat, he can directly attack his enemies with the mystical blade, which he can also throw at multiple enemies, shoot an ice beam that can freeze his enemies, and he can also turn invisible. Overall, I think Sneak's costume is especially cool, and the backstory was really entertaining to read. You'd think that someone as powerful as Lady Death wouldn't be so easily willing to give away such a powerful weapon to a simple police officer. But right from the beginning of the story, we see that Danny is a very brave man, one that is very passionate about keeping the people of his city safe. So the Blade of 1,000 Spirits is clearly in very safe hands. Next up at number 3, we have Graysoul, created by the Donut Devil on Twitter. Now, the Donut Devil has written a backstory for their character, which I will now explain. So, despite being the son of Mephisto and brother of Blackheart, the demon known as Graysoul wasn't inherently evil and did have a glimmer of light in his heart. Defiant against his father, he was banished from hell and stranded in 1920s New York City. Now, while Graysoul was morally better than his family, being the son of the devil still resulted in him having frequent dark tendencies and urges to kill, but he refused to take this out on the innocent. Inspired by the Spider-Man, Graysoul now prowls, stalks, and directs his rampages on known criminals and killers in the darkness of Manhattan Noir. So, this character's passive abilities include the ability to use mind control, magic, destroy cracked Lego walls, use super strength, trace runes, create portals, and teleport. And when it comes to traversal, he can climb onto almost any surface and swing at very fast speeds with the use of his chain. And in combat, he can target lunge attack multiple enemies, throw his pistols, which he can also use to shoot hellfire bolts that deal out heat damage, and he can also turn invisible. Overall, I think this character has a really cool costume. It's got a very devilish look to it, which is bound to strike fear into the criminals of New York. As for the backstory, I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. Graysoul is the son of the devil, but still wants to protect those that are innocent. So the idea of him taking out his devilish urges on those that deserve it is really interesting, and I personally think he would fit extremely well in the Marvel Noir universe. Next up at number 2, we have Ant-Man Noir, created by Always Dreagle on Twitter. Now, Always Dreagle has written a backstory for their character, which I will now explain. So, in a country that was facing the Great Depression, scientist Henry Pym wanted to live a different life. Employed by the government to work on new technologies to make the US a more efficient country during the coming Second World War, Henry started to work on a shrinking gun that could reduce any object or organism to the size of an ant, thus allowing entire armies and tanks to easily be transported in a single plane. However, despite despite being paid for his work, Henry was far from proud of his decision to waste his genius on the military. This resulted in him developing severe depression, which led to him alienating himself from the rest of the world. Pym eventually decided to leave everything behind. He put on a special helmet that allowed him to communicate with ants and used a shrinking gun on himself, beginning a new life in Ant Colony, where he finally found the peaceful and happy life that he always wished for. So this character's passive abilities include the ability to interact with technology panels and fix broken Lego objects. And in combat, he can use his ray gun to target multiple enemies and shoot bolts at them, which deal out heat damage, and of course he can also shrink to a very small size. Overall, I think this is honestly one of the coolest and most fascinating alternate versions of Ant-Man that I have ever seen, and it perfectly fits the noir theme. I really like how grounded this version of the character is. You know, he's definitely not a hero. I mean, he doesn't even wear a superhero costume. He's just some weirdo in a metal helmet that feels like he'd be more comfortable living among ants. But hey, who are we to judge? I just can't help but wonder what the Janet in this universe is up to. And last but most certainly not least, at number 1 on our list, we have Moon Knight Noir, created by Francesco734 on Twitter. Now, Francesco has written a backstory for their character, which I will now explain. So, one night during his sleep, taxi driver Jake Lockley was approached by Khonshu, an ancient Egyptian god, in his dreams. Now, Khonshu's ancient sword was stolen from the local museum by a man named Mark Spector, and the god ordered Lockley to retrieve it for him. That very same night, mercenary Mark Spector was also visited by Khonshu and was told to kill a man named Jake Lockley, using a sword he would soon find in the local museum. The next night, the two men attended the same museum, both wearing the same white mask. After a long fist fight, a wounded Jake managed to grab the sword, and it was then that Khonshu appeared, ordering him to kill Lockley. However, Jake quickly fled from the museum with the sword and was never seen again. Mark Spector from that day was determined to hunt down Lockley, ignoring the truth behind his foe. Mark was hallucinating the entire time. Khonshu and Jake were all inside his head, but Mark will never truly realize this, as every night he will continue to keep hunting through the streets of New York until he finally tracks down Jake Lockley and makes him pay. So this character's passive abilities include the ability to interact with technology panels, fix broken Lego objects, cut down Lego vines, dig for hidden items, track down hidden items, and also double jump. And when it comes to traversal, he can climb onto almost any surface. And in combat, he can attack enemies directly with his mystical blade, which he can also use to take out multiple enemies, and he can even turn invisible. Overall, I think the design of this character is extremely awesome. It's very basic, but that's exactly how costumes from the Marvel Noir universe are supposed to look. And as for the backstory, I absolutely loved it. The twist at the end was brilliant, and it's crazy to think that Jake will forever be looking behind his back, never truly wondering if Mark is watching him or not. And when these two do finally cross paths once again, you can bet it's going to be brutal. Massive congratulations to Francesco734 on Twitter for making the #1 Marvel Noir themed custom character. And that's it, guys. That was my top 10 favorite Marvel Noir themed characters created by the community using the LEGO Marvel Superheroes 2 character creator. But you're probably wondering, what's next? Well, to celebrate next month's release of Marvel's Avengers Infinity War, I thought it would be fitting if we themed the next episode around the Black Order, which, as you'll see in the movie, are a group of Thanos' adoptive children, those being Corvus Glaive, Ebony Maw, Proxima Midnight, and Cull Obsidian. So just in case you're new to the show, here is a quick rundown of how this whole thing works. So, if you want to enter within a chance for your name and creation to be showcased in the next episode of Community Characters, all you have to do is use LEGO Marvel Superheroes 2's in-game character creator and create a new and original member of the Black Order. So this is your very own custom creation, something that you came up with entirely by yourself and one that does not exist in any iteration of the Marvel Universe. The only major thing that I'd say don't qualify here are recreations. So if you were to make, say for example, Black Swan, then that would not count, as she is already a pre-existing member of the Black Order from the comics. So it really wouldn't involve a lot of creativity and just not seem fair in my opinion. Now you can share your creation with me via two ways. The first way you can go about doing this is by using YouTube. So you can record a gameplay video of your custom character, but you will need to showcase their look, powers, and abilities, so that if you're chosen, I can perfectly recreate your custom character in-game to showcase in the next video alongside other community-made creations. Once you've made the video, you just need to upload it to YouTube, but please make sure that the title of the video looks like this. So it's LMSH2, that's Lego Marvel Superheroes 2, community characters entry, name of your character. Now, if you don't have access to YouTube, then don't worry, because you can also send me your creations via Twitter. So, like YouTube, you can just make a gameplay video, but if you can't do that, you can also just take a screenshot of your custom character in-game. Just remember to also include detail in another tweet about your custom character's look, powers, and abilities, and even little details like what color their powers are, so that if your creation is chosen, I can perfectly recreate them in-game to showcase in the next video. Whichever way you decide to share your creation on Twitter, just make sure to use the official hashtag community characters. Alright guys, that's pretty much it for this video. As always, I want to give a massive thank you to every single one of you that participated in this episode of community characters, and I absolutely cannot wait to see what you all come up with the Black Order theme. All that's left to say is that entries must be in before the 25th of March, as the next episode of community characters will release shortly after that. Anyway guys, I want to thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for lots more videos real soon, and as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe.